Explore the harmony of health and holiness through a Catholic lens. Discover how faith rooted in tradition fosters vibrant living. This podcast rebroadcasts the weekly Becoming Gift segment on Morning Offering on Ave Maria Radio. You can check out the Physically Spiritual podcast from Awakened Catholic for my long-form discussions and presentations, or you can find my Substack at becominggift.com. This is your host, Andrew Reinhardt.
I want to continue a series this Lent on fasting, and we ended our last session talking a little bit about fasting from information and smartphones and media and stuff like that. So I wanted to dig into that a little bit more today. On average today, the average person in the United States spends 7 hours a day on some type of screen, whether it be their computer at work or their TV or their smartphone. That's 43% of your waking hours on a screen, almost 50% of your time on some kind of media. This is interesting. In the Gospels, Jesus says about 30,000 words. So if we were to think about that in podcast terms, everything Jesus said could be contained in 2 episodes of the Joe Rogan Experience.
Wow.
Yeah, man. So the next time you're binging on podcasts or YouTube videos or TikToks or something, think about that. That in just 2 episodes of the most popular podcasts in the world, we could fit every single one of Jesus's words. And here's the thing, Jesus revealed everything that's necessary to us for our salvation. So here's the clue. More information probably isn't going to save you. Right? That's the heresy of Gnosticism, that we're saved through knowledge, through nous, through the mind, and not through the work of Jesus Christ. So, of course, we do need to know something. We need to know our faith. We need to know the words of Christ. We need to know how to live our life. And so some information is important, but we certainly take too much of it in our day and age. Part of this is the fact that we have this body that doesn't change very much, and we have an environment that changes quickly. And regardless of whether it's a digital screen or a landscape, your body still experiences it as the environment, as a something it's living in, something it's experiencing. So in a great book called Scarcity Brain by a journalist, Michael Easter, he references the work of different scientists using ideas about optimal foraging theory, that humans have been designed to forage in an environment. And he says that humans are what are called sometimes informivores, that one of the things we're hungry for is new information, because new information means new opportunity, new food, being more safe, better environments, a better place to live. So essentially, when we're in an environment, we calculate whether it's worth staying with the current source of information or moving on to find something better. This is sometimes called marginal value theorem, and people apply this to our information seeking. So this is actually extended to human information behavior. Finding the brain essentially treats new information the same way it treats food. Another theory here is variable ratio reinforcement. This is the same idea that they use to optimize slot machines. Right, that there's variable results, and there's a certain percent of basically winning or getting different gifts out of the system or different rewards out of the system that keeps you engaged. But the idea is that it's always different, and it's hitting you a certain amount. So these companies that create this information environment understand the way the human brain works. It's optimizing for our attention. So when you're scrolling through your TikTok feed or your news feed or YouTube or whatever, all of these things are working in the background to hack your biology, to hack your neurology, your psychology, in order to keep you consuming more. The same way that person is sitting there pressing the button on the slot machine for hours and hours and hours. So it's important that we need to, when we're in an environment like this, where you might call it sort of beyond what we would encounter in nature, right? Because the amount of information we can consume in a day online might be more than our ancestors would have gotten in a whole year, as far as novel information, learning about new things, encountering new ideas, right? So this is, we call this sort of hyperphysiological, or it's like beyond our body's ability to deal with in a natural level. It's like the difference between, eating a plant you dig up out of the ground versus some food that's engineered in a laboratory to hack your reward sensors in your brain. This is interesting from Pope Francis. He said, when media and the digital world become omnipresent, their influence can stop people from learning how to live wisely and think deeply and to love generously. So oftentimes we can substitute new and novel information for becoming wise, for learning more deeply, for learning what we need to know. When talking about the virtue of studiousness, St. Thomas Aquinas talks about the vice of curiosity. And that's learning about things that aren't really necessary for our duty in life, or learning too much, or learning in the wrong way, or learning about things that we really don't need to know or shouldn't know. Right? So the church has recognized that this kind of knowing things that we don't need to know or too much or in the wrong way is actually a vice. And then this is from Pope Benedict. He said, silence is an integral element of communication. In its absence, words rich in content cannot exist. In silence, we are better able to listen to and understand ourselves, and God speaks to us in the heart. Right, so here's ultimately, I think, the risk of this sort of information buffet or information scavenging environment that we're in, is that we miss the present moment. Right? We miss those moments with our children, to be truly present to the people we're around, to be present to the nature we're surrounded by, to know our feelings and our emotions, to be able to pray, to be able to hear the voice of the Lord. So I think this Lent, we need to enter into a new kind of silence. In whatever way, to limit our media diet, right? To put guardrails on it. Maybe it's deleting the podcast app on your phone. Maybe it's just unplugging the TV and turning it toward the wall. You know that old movie, The Ring, and that little ghost would come out of the TV? I always just thought, just turn the TV and put it against the wall.
Right.
And she can't come into the room. I didn't think about that one. But think of a way to actually change your environment. And this is important because they're hacking your biology and your psychology, meaning just trying harder probably isn't going to fix it. You need some help. You need a little bit of support because we're vulnerable people into the world around us. So this Lent, it's important that we control our information environment.
Andrew, do you think when you get like TMI, too much information, do you think that part of a response is you crave silence? It's kind of like when you eat too much salty stuff, you want something sweet, you know? Can that happen? I mean, because I sense it in myself, but I don't know if that's kind of a
you certainly can.
thing.
But it's sort of like being at a buffet. You know, at a certain point in the buffet, you get sick of eating.
Yeah.
But by the time that happens, you've already eaten way too much. It's like the enough signal is sort of a lagging indicator, not a leading indicator.
Yeah.
So by the time you really feel like you don't want to do it anymore, you've probably already had twice as much as you really need.
I think about this, Andrew. You're quoting Benedict, you're quoting Francis, and now Leo. And you just have to think the Spirit it's shouting, not shouting, but so consistently saying, quiet down, guys. You're going to have to find some silence. There's an attack going on here, and it's taking you in the wrong direction. And I'm trying to tell you, you've got to pay attention to this. Use this sacred time to remove yourselves from some of this so that I can talk to you.
Yeah, the psychologist, Dr. Greg Bottaro, talks about the sacrament of the present moment.
Yeah.
And it's basically the idea that in the present moment, God is revealing himself to us, and we have to become present to what is in order to have that experience. God is here. God is with us.
Thank you for listening to Becoming Gift. You can catch the show live every Wednesday at 8 a.m. Eastern on Ave Maria Radio. You can also find my long-form podcasts, discussions, and presentations on the Physically Spiritual podcast. Subscribe to my Substack at becominggift.com to find more from me, and don't forget to like and subscribe.